Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my channel. Now, today we are going to continue on with the Tansmanian invasion breakdown, but we're going to be talking about the war and the first few battles of the beginning of the war. So without further ado, let us begin with the video. On the afternoon of Sunday, January 28th, 2024, the nation of Kondos received a message from the Emperor of Tansmania asking to be allies with them. Ma Chi-hun knew that Tansmania was planning to reclaim the old nations to reform the empire that they lost, and he knew that if he joined him, he would suffer a lot more consequences if he joined, and immediately decided to respond to Tansmania with its decline of joining their alliance. Later, Ma Chi-hun told the nations of Basaja, Morlant, and Yingola about what happened, and they decided to prepare themselves for invasion. And even though these nations were talking amongst themselves, others have heard of the rumor that Tansmania is planning on an invasion on Kondas and the other countries, but they didn't worry about it because Tansmania wouldn't be focused on them. But two nations took this very seriously, which were the Greenlandians and the Salipinos, or the Salipine Islands. The president of Greenland, along with the other nations, decided to take the time they had to prepare themselves for war and an attack that may will be launched on them at any time, or will be launched on them at any time. Tasmania had received Kanda's refusal to join them on rebuilding their empire, and as expected, the emperor didn't like that their old ally had become an ally for his enemies. So he asked the leader of Tanlin, Chikan Sitong, to join his army for the same cause. And it resulted with Talon joining on their side, which made the emperor happy and began to construct their invasion plan on Kondas. The two nations decided to launch their invasion on Kondas on Tuesday, January 30th, because if they attack first, their enemies may have an advantage of defeating them because they will be expecting them to attack first. And the only way to distract them is to make a false plan of invading them on the 29th instead of the 30th. So they distressed a fake call for the allied nations to believe that they will attack on the morning of the 29th. And as soon as the allies received that signal, they could have time to prepare their troops to be boarded on their ships, being sent to Kondas for their original plan on the 30th. The allies had heard the message and immediately believed that Tansmania and Tanzania would invade Kondas at dawn the next day. So Kondas has decided to evacuate all civilians from the nation to be relocated to Morlan for safety, as the army remained in the nation to fight the enemy forces to buy time for their allies to set up more defenses. The soldiers have strengthened their defenses on the beachheads with anti-aircraft guns, artillery, and mines, just in case the enemy launches an air attack or a land invasion with armor and soldiers. The Condustians are prepared for the invasion and are waiting for the enemy to make their move. As time went by, the Allies realized that there wasn't going to be an invasion because it had been a few hours, and it was noon with no signs of a naval fleet, which they were relieved, but they also knew that their enemy could be planning to attack them tonight or early tomorrow, so they decided to constantly have routine watches to check the sea for any signs of ships that pose a threat, and the method of communication they are using are radio and telegraph lines that are connected with their neighboring ally, the Salipines. The Salipines have a better advantage of spotting ships because they have watchtowers and airplanes that are assigned with patrolling the island and its waters, being a reconnaissance unit for them and Kondas. On Tuesday morning at 11 a.m., the Condustian soldiers were awakened by the sound of airplanes swooping down on their positions. Immediately, they load their weapons and prepare themselves for a battle. And as they were doing so, they heard bombs dropping, and it turns out that the planes were Tansmanian. The commander ordered the gunners in the towers with the anti-aircraft guns to open fire and shoot them down, which they did for a few minutes, and would later confirm that 2 planes were shot down. Next came the sighting of landing craft heading for the beachhead, which luckily the observers on the Salipine spotted them and immediately reported it to the Condustian commander by sending a radio call. After he received the information, he told his soldiers to shoot shoot when the enemy lands on the beach, and as they were waiting, the ships landed and released Tansmanian infantry and a couple of Tansmanian vehicles which were armored. The Condustians held strong against two waves of Tansmanian troops, but they were losing a lot of men due to the enemy's mortars and bazookas shelling their bunkers and towers. The commander, seeing this, seeing that he doesn't have any men left to hold for the third wave, decided to retreat his men to regroup in the village of Maku to gain better ground. As for the Tansmanian soldiers, they were glad that their enemies retreated and had recaptured the defenses on the beachhead, which was a Tansmanian victory, but it wouldn't be for long. The general that launched the assault on Condas, General Ishimo Nawa, heard about their success about capturing the beachhead and was proud that his strategy worked. He would then send a radio message to the emperor asking for his next order, and the emperor replied saying that he should hold the beachhead and occupy it for their forces to land, and that tomorrow, with the help of armor support, he would send a unit of men to capture the capital of Kanoi. The commander of the Condustian forces who commanded the soldiers to retreat from the beachhead was Commander Xian Pham. Pham radioed Ma Chi-hun telling him about the defeat after their encounter with the Tansmanian soldiers, which Ma Chi-hun was upset about it, but he was glad that Pham was alive, and he had a few men left to defend the village they were staying. He then told Pham that he was going to make a call with Morland and Basaja to see if they could help him reinforce his defenses in his country to prevent the Tansmanians and Tanlayans from reaching the capital. Pham was glad that he would call for help, and he was told before the end of their conversation to stay in the village and be on lookout for enemy movement. Meanwhile, the Tansmanian forces had begun setting up their new position as their headquarters and supply station, which is needed because tomorrow morning they would be advancing into Condas to fight more soldiers and hopefully capture the capital without having heavy casualties. Ma Chi-hun had contacted the leaders of Merlant and Basaja, requesting for help, which the two nations agreed to help them defend their nation by sending their troops and armor support to aid in their defense, which they would arrive late tonight. Hun was relieved that they could provide help, and then radioed Pham telling him that their friends would be sending troops to help them, with which Pham was also glad about it. But he knew that their enemy could attack on their position tomorrow morning, so he asked Ma Chi-hun if he could tell them to meet with him at Maku to hold defenses and install the Tansmanian soldiers so that other units could be ready to defend their positions if his post falls, which Hun agreed. Pham ended his conversation with his leader so that he could tell his friends where their soldiers should be stationed, which he did, and they are now heading their way as quickly as possible. The nation of Yangolia heard about the Tansmanian landing in Condas, and the leader of the nation, Genghis Khan, ordered his soldiers to set up defenses on the northern border just in case Condas gets conquered and their enemy would be facing their way. The Allied forces have arrived and helped Pham's men set up defenses and fortify the positions before the Tansmanians advanced, which was great timing. The Tansmanian forces, however, had their forces ready since late last night, and are now starting their advance on to the village of Maku. As the soldiers were close to the village, to where they could see their enemies' positions, they decided to start calling in air support to distract them first, and when they were done distracting them and taking out any other fortified positions but blocking their way, they would then send in their soldiers to take the remaining soldiers out and then occupy the village and continue their assault on Merlant and Yangolia. The Allied soldier heard Tansmanian planes about to drop their bombs, which they immediately began to take cover and let the Merlantian anti-aircraft tanks cover them while they call in air support, which proved to be successful because a Condustian air base was near their location and managed to also shoot down the Tansmanian planes. But it also cost a few Condustian pilots to be shot down and one Merlantian anti-aircraft tank to be destroyed. The remaining planes that were still flying were ordered to retreat because they knew that they were the only planes left to rely on, and the Allied soldiers knew that the infantry would come next, so they started to go back in their positions and man their weapons for the next attack, which came sooner than expected. Tansmanian vehicles and infantry started to charge at the Allied soldiers in mass formation, and then gunfire and artillery began to start. As the battle continued on both sides were losing a lot of men, but the side that was losing more soldiers was the Allies. Commander Pham, General Zhu of Morlant, and General Paston of Basaja decided to retreat their forces into the next village, Minquan. There they would regroup and defend their position there, and hopefully cease the Tansmanians from continuing their attack.